Are we recording? All right, Sunny Banana. Hi, my name is Ayanda. Today I'll be teaching you how to create a to-do list using HTML and JavaScript. This is completely unscripted, and I'll be showing you everything from how you design your application, how you think about it, what you think about, and just how you go about actually realizing your idea. So what I'd like to do first is open up Visual Studio Code. That's my preferred IDE, and IDE is a tool you use to write your code, test your code. VS Code just so happens to be my favorite. It's really good for JavaScript, HTML, and that kind of stuff. I would say languages that are not typed. Even though it does have like some type support, I would definitely go with something like IntelliJ for that. But for this example, we're going to be using VS Code. So yeah, let's jump into it. I think, yeah, let me open it up. VS Code. Let's see. So I had already just created an empty folder called to-do list in thinking about doing this video. I'm going to create a new file. Let's say new file. Let's call it spec.md. And this is just going to have information about what we plan to build. So yeah, I find it's always useful to design ahead of time before you jump into building. So yeah, let's think about it. I think that MD is supposed to be in lowercase actually. Edit, let's change that. MD just stands for markdown. So what do we want? Let's say to-do list. All right. And first and foremost, we want to be able to list our items. So list items. I would like to be able to, let me say, view a single item. So view an item. If you've never heard about CRUD before, let me introduce CRUD to you. CRUD, C-U-R-D, stands for create, read, update, and delete. And that's basically the four basic functions that you do to any form of data or resource. So for each item, I would like to be able to create. So let's say create item, let's say read item. I would like to update an item. I would like to delete an item. And then over and above all that, I would like to list all the items. All right, let's do that. So these are the first, let me say, primary functions I want to be able to do with my to-do application. So let's start with the first one. Let's just see what we're talking about when we say we want to list our items. So I would jump into now designing a basic user interface, like what the end user wants to see. Say if you have a client that asks for this application, what can you show them, and what can you do to demonstrate that this can now be ticked off. All right, so let me pull up draw.io. Let's see, create a new diagram. I usually, for wireframes, I like to go down here. Let's see. Yeah, I think this will do. This will just give us a basic elements that we can use to design. And yeah, I'm not a designer by at all. So any shortcuts I can use will take those shortcuts. All right, so maybe at the top we will have something like to do can type to do list. Let's remove that. I think here on top we're gonna have a button that says add to do. This is maybe too wide. Let's see. I'll keep this. It looks fine. Maybe I'll change it up a little bit. I definitely don't need this. What's this? Let's move that out of the way. Remove all of these. Might just delete this after all. Okay. Super cool. Super cool. That should be fine. Make this slightly shorter. That should be fine. And we'll have a list, something like this, but I don't know. I don't really like boxing things in so much. I'm sounding like a designer. I used to want to be a designer, but my talents ran out. Maybe it just wasn't there. Oh, that's good enough. So this will be a button. Probably see something like add new. I don't know if I should make this lower or uppercase. It doesn't really matter. Okay, we'll have a to-do list item. Get that big, perhaps. Let's say maybe I need to exercise. Maybe at a time, like a date time. Maybe you have like a time. Come on, what's going on? Put that there. Delete all of those. 28, 29, April, 20, 22. I don't know, maybe at 6 p.m. you want to exercise, do a little bit of exercise. Let's make this a bit smaller. Okay, that's good enough. I'm happy. Move this up. It's going to be another list item. Another list item. Okay. I think that's good enough. Let's remove that. So, yeah, I think this is what I'm looking for in a to-do list. A young logo over there. Let me remove the background. I don't like it. It's gonna make me think too much when I'm trying to design. I'm trying to build, I mean. Make this slightly bigger. I think 24, somewhere there. Should be fine. All right, let me not get too far with this. All right, I think that's good enough. Let's move these a bit higher. I'm doing the very thing I didn't want to do now. I mean, this is just a quick SketchUp. All right, cool. So that's not a new to-do list. I wasn't looking. To-do list or something like that. Okay. So that's how list items is gonna look. Okay, I don't know. How do you put a tick? We've got a UI for that. Okay, create item. How we're gonna create an item? Well, we're gonna click on this button, but then what's gonna happen is we probably want to launch a dialog. Maybe it's gonna have like a header. It says create new item, something like that. Maybe make it a bit smaller. Okay. Over there, you should be able to create edit description. So that would be like this exercise. Let's change that from exercise. Let's say groceries. Series. Let's say chores. Or chaos. Chores. Yeah, looks good. All right. So we should be able to edit description. Let's put it over there. Maybe change its color. Description. Good enough. Date time. Maybe you want to be able to just cancel the whole thing and not actually create a to-do list item. Let's say cancel. have a create button this side. So yeah, what would happen here is you click on this. Let me give that a. There we go. Oh, come on. Move to France. Yeah, something like that. Don't have to jump to conclusions, but definitely do get the picture. All right, so you click on this guy, and we would come to this modal here. All right, so I think we have our create UI UI down, read item. What do we mean by that? Maybe if you click on one of these items, we will pop up another dialog. Maybe that has the description, the time. So we have the description. It would have the time on it. Maybe we can just close it. Let's take the whole thing. You can say close, and maybe also we can delete this item. All right. So yeah. Say if you click on one of these, then you come to one of these exercises. Let's put trolls there, just so it makes sense. Stop. Okay. All right. So you would click on one of these, and it would open a dialog like this that would have your description. Let's move that up just slightly. It's messing with my OCD somehow. And these two. Okay. That looks just about fine. Okay, so you click on one of these to-do list items. Sorry for that. And it will open a dialog like this, and you can then dismiss the dialog by clicking close, or you can delete the item and it will remove it from the list here. So let's go back to our list. So we have the read UI updates. We don't have an update yet, do we? Okay, so that's almost done. Let's see, what are we gonna do? Now, you know what? I think, no, it's fine. Let's add a button. Why not? Okay. No, man. Take the whole thing. Come on. Come on. Okay. Come on. Let's see, edit. Okay, so you would edit this item, and I think we'll get something similar to this. Let's grab everything. And let's see, edit item. And then here we'd have something like chores. And then here we'll have our date time, and you can change that. Update. All right, so what happens is when you cancel, this is just dismissed. When you update, well, we update the element and we repopulate our list. When you delete, it's just removed from the list. We close this. When you say close, we just close this. Yeah, let me put a button. Let me put a connector over there. Moment. Okay, there we go. Let's move it down a little bit so we can clearly see that that line is coming from edit, just to see that. All right, I think this is good enough for our user interface. We can see clearly how everything flows, or rather, let me just say I can see clearly and get a pretty good idea of what's going on here. Set a background, make it white. What's going on? Background. Apply. Not to text. Oh. Fill. Nice. Fill. 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 Okay. I think we have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Let's go back to our checklist. So we have our UI down. All right, so let's get to talking about a little bit of system design. We are clearly working with to-do list items here. So how are we going to represent them in data? Ooh, sorry. All right, so let's see. Maybe let's create a new folder. Let's call it data. In our data, let's create a new file. Let's call it index.js. Let's think about this. All right, so we need to-do lists, a constant of items. It's going to be an array of, let's say, objects, and we'll have a description. I said chores, something like that. Chores, not chores, chores. Date time. I don't know how it's gonna look. Something like 29 April 2022, 16. Okay, something weird like that. I think that's good enough. Let's create a second one, a third one. Second one is like exercise. Okay, at some point, do my homework. All right, obviously we still just planning it out here. So this is how we are going to represent our to-do list items. It's a list of items, but an item consists of a description and a date time object or attribute. Let's go back here. So specification. So that's how we list. Let's say, I don't know. We've done this. Okay, I don't think this is completely done yet. Let's open maybe a new tab. All right, so we need a way of taking our data. Where are my elements here? Open. Shapes. View. Someone please teach me how to use this app. Oh. All right. Sorry, I'm taking a sip of my coffee. You do know it's very important to have coffee when you are doing anything in IT, even though I don't know if this really qualifies as IT. All right, so anyways, we're going to have our data, which looks something like that. We go and we already have like our user interface, which is HTML. Let's say HTML UI, and we need a way for the HTML to communicate with our data. Let me see. I think we have some list items there. Let's say our data interface. All right. And our data interface, well, we are supposed to be able to list items. And I think that's all of this stuff that we have here: list items, create item, read item, update item, delete item. So the HTML user interface is supposed to be able to call functions that are able to, well, do the functions. I'm reading this wrong. Our HTML interface is supposed to be able to call or interact with our data in order to accomplish these features described here in our specifications. So, and then our CRUD, create item, our read item, read item, update item, go in there and go in there, update item, CRUD, we can delete one, and delete an item. So yeah, creating an item, this guy would call this, come on. This guy, come on, what's going on? This guy will have the ability to, there we go, call one of these functions. These functions are basically how our data layer looks to the outside world. But of course, our data layer is not just our data, but we have to have a whole lot of like functionality or logic that protects our data, because you know this is probably going to change in the future. I'm thinking in the future we will want to persist this data maybe in the browser, so you can close your browser, open it later, you still have access to the data. Maybe we want to access it on another device. So since this is going to change, we're going to create a separation between how we handle the logic of the data and the actual data itself. So let's put a layer here called data logic. All right. So I want the center. Maybe if I go backwards. Cool. Then I need to reverse these lines. Oh, not reverse them. Just add another arrow going back. This as well needs an arrow going back. All right. Let's move you a bit further away. There we go. All right, so how does this look now? I can move these a bit closer. Moving a bit closer. All right. Hey. Okay, so what are we saying here? We're saying that we have a HTML user interface. We have our data on the other end, because we want to abstract how our data is represented and where it is in the future. We create an abstraction. So we have like a data logic layer, which will be able to handle whatever we do in the data or to the data in the future. So at the moment, it's just like a JavaScript array. But in the future, it could change to like a JSON object. Maybe we have like a database, like a SQL query database, NoSQL database, or whatever database. Maybe you're just saving a bunch of documents somewhere, or I don't know, WhatsApp messages, and that's how you save your data. You know, that can change. But we will abstract it so that we just have this data logic layer, which basically handles however our data changes. And then we have this interface, which is going to represent the type of conversation that our HTML user interface has with our data. So the things that the HTML user interface can do, essentially. It doesn't really care or need to know what is the implementation of the data in the back end or in our server or wherever. I mean, it's just HTML after all. Sorry, let me take a sip of my coffee. All right, so let's see. To list items, I think that's going to be pretty simple. We're going to write some logic in our data logic that is able to create or let me just say return this array to the HTML. So the HTML will call list items a function, and that function will call some logic which is able to return a list of elements. To create an item, well, I think the HTML has to call this function with and pass to it an object, possibly something like this, similar, I think something like this, to our data logic, and the data logic then stores it inside wherever we persist or store our data. To read an item, well, I think what would be important there then is that the HTML actually is able to say which item it wants to read. So for that, we need to be able to identify the item. So we'd need something like an ID here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this would be essentially something like a unique identifier, you know, as like you have an ID number. You need a unique identifier for each item so that we know what you're talking about. Say, for example, you have to do homework twice and you edit this twice. So if you want to update this item, this homework item, and you just say, yeah, I want to update the homework item to say maths, well, I think logically we wouldn't know which homework you want to update. But if we had an identifier, like a unique number that is attached to each item, then we know exactly which item you want to update. Say you had to do this on the 30th. And you're doing this on the 29th. So you want to update this homework and you just want to add like maths. And for the second one, you want to update it so that here you're doing English. All right. So you can just say, I want to update the item with ID 1, 2, 3, 4, so that the description changes from homework to homework and English in parentheses or brackets. All right, so I think already we are seeing where, or the utility of this data logic layer. We need something or a way of generating these unique IDs, and that's not something that's going to be done in the UI. I mean, that's really just like logic or data stuff, and it's not something you can really accomplish with HTML. So that's definitely something that's going to sit in our data logic layer. So perhaps let's do this. Let's say here we will have the data logic layer. Let's call it. I think that should be index.js as the primary. Nah, it shouldn't. I think our interface is gonna be index.js. Let me just go back. Let's do it over here. Do it all together. So I'm trying to now give these sections, these blocks, names, so we know how to identify them, how we're going to create files for them. Let's call this index. So when we talk to our data according to the HTML file, this is just the main points of interaction with our data. We have what we're going to call logic for now. And here, let's call it store or DB. Let's call it database. Yeah, DB. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So let's come back here. Let's change this to db.js. We will export this. Okay. Before we get there, let's create this logic.db page. create file logic.js, and that's gonna have access to our database, and we're gonna have an index.js, and that is going to expose these functions essentially to the outside world. But I think we can already just start writing them in there. Let's see. Let's start with create. Let's create a function called. Is it create first? No, I think it's list items. Function list items. All right. This is going to return like an array of something. Let's put a comment here. Returns list of to-do items. Create, it's the whole CRUD, remember? So we have a create item, CRUD, read item, update item, and delete item. Cool. Now to create an item, we let's start. To create an item, I think we said we are going to need something like the item object. Let's say param would be an object with well, it's an object. It looks like this. There's another way of doing comments. There we go. Ah, nice. Params item returns boolean. So I'm just gonna return like a true or false. If an item is created properly, an item is gonna be like an array with a description and date time. I don't even know if I'm doing this correctly, but I understand what's going on. All right, so that's gonna return like a, let's say false for now. It's gonna just be a boolean. So it's gonna return true or false, and you can call list items afterwards to see what's been created. Alternatively, what we can do actually, we can return the to-do item, but remember in our design, we have specified, oh, it's not here. We have specified that our to-do list items actually have an ID associated with them. So that's gonna be something added to our objects that we get from the user interface. All right, so we can return the updated item. Yeah, I think that's cool. It's gonna be something like that. To read an item, well, we're just gonna return an item. We will need an ID, at least the ID of the item, and we're gonna return the item itself. Read item is gonna be a similar situation. Oh, sorry, I think I was daydreaming for a little bit there. Let's undo that. So we need an ID here. To delete an item, we need an ID here. So here we need the entire item objects. We need an ID of the item we want to read. We need an ID of the item we want to update, and possibly an object with fields that we want to update. I would say the new item that you want to set in place of this item with an ID. Okay, that's cool. And what we would return is not the updated item. We can just return a boolean here. So false. Okay, what is it gonna do for us here? Oh, cool. To read an item, we're gonna return an object. Returns object. I should really learn these. They look very useful. And here, to delete an item, we're gonna return true or false, like a true if it's been deleted successfully. Returns boolean. All right, boolean. Obviously, my comments are very bad, but it's helping us. It's helping us. I would say we have a clear picture of what we're doing now. We can then export these guys. Like I said, this file essentially just contains what our HTML is going to know about our data. Maybe I'm starting off the wrong end here. Maybe I got a bit overexcited. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's see where we get with this. So we can just put export behind all of these functions of ours. We want to export all of these functions after all. Come on. Export, export, export. All right. What do we have? Logic. We don't have logic yet. Okay. Take a sip of my coffee. All right. So in our logic, I don't know, we can have a nice, maybe, sorry, my coffee is getting cold. Ooh, okay. Excuse me. All right, so from our index, what we will want to do is import, let's say, logic from, let's export something here, export, not everything, export, nothing yet, let's just chill. So our logic is going to have a function to probably similar functions to what we have this side. Or rather, let me say implementations of what we have this side. And I don't think I want to export all of them directly like this. And here we want to import our DB from, where is it going? DB, yeah, .js. All right, so for list items, we want to be returning our DB, but since we don't want anyone outside of our domain or anyone who's not this file, this logic file, to edit our database, what we're going to do is we're going to change this into a string first. Now, I don't know if you've heard of something called JSON, but essentially it's called JavaScript object notation. It's a string like a name, like anything in parentheses like this. You will see it come up in this color in my IDE, but it's written in such a way that it looks the same as a JavaScript object. So what you can do to make sure that no one can actually tamper with the original data here, you can just convert your database into a JSON string. Let's say stringify. And then what we can do is convert it back to a JavaScript object. But now we would have, let me say, we would have broken the reference to the original database that we have here. So let's say let's break a reference to original object. Okay. To create an item, what we want to do is so when we get an item, let's see, an item should look something like this. It should have a description, and it should have a date time. All right, so firstly, what we can do is just verify that we actually do have these fields. Let's put a comment. Verify that we have both, what would I call them? I guess attributes. Okay, so how would we do that? We would say, and how do we verify that that we don't have them? I guess we would like return an error or something of that kind. So if item, and you can do something like this. Well, let me just Google how to make sure JS make sure var is an object. Okay, we can do something like this. So firstly, item must be an object. Okay, maybe we can create a function here, is object. Let's say variable, and we return type of variable equals object. So if is object, or rather not is object, item, or item safe check dot description is not set, and hopefully not 0 either, please. Or we don't have a date time, then what we're going to do is return an error. How do we return an error again in JavaScript? Let me just Google quickly. By the way, the question I'm asking, you can literally go and Google that question directly as well. So how to return an error in JS. Let me pull that down so you can see what I'm Googling as well. Writes a function that returns an error in JavaScript. All right, scroll a bit down. Throw new error, user not found. Okay. Please submit a valid item, something like that. Is invalid. Okay, something like that. I think that's good. All right. Secondly, we want to generate a unique identifier. If we go back to our data, we want to make sure, where's our data, our database, we want to make sure that these IDs are completely unique every single time. I am possibly jumping the gun here a little bit. So, okay, let's just do the create item one, but I think let's do some HTML to get everyone else excited about what we're doing at the moment. I do know that having something visual does motivate you to keep coding, and this video is already about like 40 minutes long. So let's finish this function, and we'll do some HTML and come back to this at a later stage. So generates a unique ID. That's probably going to be a new function. Let's say generate ID. What we can do here is create a variable that has the latest ID that we have that we've created. At this moment, it's just going to be 0, and let's say we're just going to keep counting up. we're gonna return plus plus ID. So this is just gonna keep counting up, ensuring that we never actually using the same ID. So generate ID. Where is, let's say, const unique ID equals this guy, generate ID. All right, and then we can take our item and say ID. In fact, we can just put it straight in there. Equals this generated ID, and we can then just push it into our database here. That is safe because we created it after all. We can say push the item. Cool, it's in there. We can then just return the item. Like I said here, we return the updated item. You see, we updated the item here. We pushed it into our database already updated, and then we're gonna return it so the front end can know that yeah, it's been updated, and it even has what do you call this? An ID. All right, cool. Let's jump to our HTML. Let's create some HTML. I mean, we haven't done some HTML in a while, and we're already so far. All right, so let's start off with the home page. It looks pretty simple. Shouldn't take too long. What are we gonna do? Maybe create a new folder. New folder. That's good. Source. I don't know why I always have to have like a source or something like that. Or pages. I don't know. What do you guys want to call it? Pages? I think pages. Files, HTML, UI. I think UI makes sense. UI, great. In our UI, we're gonna create a new file, index.html. Okay, HTML. We're gonna have a head. This is just everyday HTML, really. Body. No, I'm not an HTML developer. I'm not that great with it. But you know, let's just see what we can do. So let's have a wrapper for our app. We're gonna call it wrapper. Let's give it a border. Let's create some styles. Let's say wrapper. It's probably frowned upon to name your divs wrapper, wrapper for a suite or something, a wrapper like EPO. Let's give it a border 1px solid black. Just simple everyday wrapper. Let's give it a max width of I don't know, 400 pixels. Let's give it a padding of about 16 pixels, I guess. I don't know. Let's just say hello world. All right, I am a developer after all. Let's open this with live server, just so we have a live preview of what we are building. Great. There we have hello world. Let's make this a bit smaller. Doesn't need to be that big, really. Let's make this a bit bigger. Okay, want to position this in the center. Let's say margin auto. Great. Okay, live server does that. It reloads your page every time you make a change. So it's really cool for that. Okay. What else? What else? Let's keep moving. So we want to build this. So we have a header on top. So let's div.header. I don't know. Maybe we can just call it header like that. And then we have our logo on the left, or title. The title. I just got a logo. Div.logo is called to-do list. I don't know if that's good. To-do list. I think that's fine. Logo. to-do list. On the right, we're gonna have a button that says add new. How's that looking? I think it's all right. So our header is gonna be a flex box, just because we want this in a line. So display flex, justify contents, space between. I don't know, maybe there's a better way of doing this these days. I haven't done this in a while, so forgive me. Header.logo. Want to make that slightly bigger, so font size. It's gonna be like 24 pixels. I forgot what I made it in my design here. I think 24 pixels is fine though. Looks alright. Make it bold. Font weight. Bold. Great. Maybe give my header a line at the bottom like that. Should be cool. Let's say border bottom 1 pixel solid black. That looks alright. Let's give it a padding at the bottom, maybe same size as that, 16. Padding bottom 16 pixels. Cool. Alright, we can also start creating our list. Div list, div dot list item. Alright, we're gonna have a div description. Probably gonna have a date time thingamabob as well. Date time. Let's say homework. Let's say 28 or 29 April 2022 at 4 o'clock. How does that look? It's not too bad. It's not too shabby. So our list items. Let's give it a little border 1 pixel solid. Maybe not black. Let's try something a bit lighter. Let's see how that looks. That's not too bad really. I can't complain. Padding 8 pixels. How are you looking? Good. Margin top 16 pixels. And I keep going 16, 18, 16, not 18, 8. And I think it's looking alright. Not too bad, not too shabby. Let's add a second one. Let's see how that works. Greatness. Alright. So I think that's looking alright. Maybe when you hover over our list item, we just want to have some visual representation that you're hovering over it. Let's see. Hover. There's something called outline. 2 pixels. Solid. I don't know, light blue. Light sky blue. I think that looks alright. How does it look? I'm happy with that. And cursor, pointer. I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with that. I don't like this. Let me stop complaining. It looks fine. All right. So when you click on this, as our design says, when you click on an item, we're gonna open a dialog that has the item description. So somehow, some way, we need to store our ID on this element, or store like somehow, some way, we need to be able to know what that element is, so that when we launch our dialog, we can present our information, or we can just like copy some HTML here and paste it in here. But I think that's going to be more difficult. All right, so let's go back down here. We will probably have something like, I don't know if you've heard of data attributes, but essentially you can just like write data, and you can then create a variable, any name for your data, and you can store information there. So I think that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to call that, give that an ID of 12353. Now this is not the same as saying ID. It's similar, except these are user-defined attributes. So if you want to create your own attributes, your own HTML attributes, use this data attribute first. Say data dash, and then you can put in whatever you want to put in there. You can even go and say something like class. I do think it's a bad idea. So maybe let's stay away from defining our own data attributes that are also used in HTML, that are also like HTML attributes. So like class, maybe let's not say data class. Let's give it something more specific. Let's say item ID. How's that? I think that's clever. Item ID. No, not on the whole thing, man. Just on the list item. List item, and then give it a different data attribute. Now this is gonna come into effect a bit later. Maybe, you know what, I'm gonna put it in at that time so that you understand exactly why I'm putting this in there. All right, let's see how we are looking. Great, I think this looks wonderful. First and foremost, what I think the first thing we can try is see if we can populate this list with the data that comes from our data source. Let's see if we can make this dynamic. All right, so what we would have to do, let's go back and see our diagram again. How does this work? So our HTML has access to this interface to our logic. So our HTML somehow needs to be able to call this list items function, which is going to return a list of our to-do items. Let's see how we're going to do that. What I like to do usually is I'll create I'll pair my HTML with a JS file that is responsible for the things happening on that HTML page. So let's create index.js. Now this is just because this is HTML, sorry, index.html. That's why I'm creating index.html, just so that you know they go together. Usually applications have more than one page. So if you have some JavaScript working on some JavaScripts for every page, it gets out of hand pretty quickly, especially if you do not know which JavaScript file is for which page. Also, I mean, you can write JavaScript directly in your HTML file, but if you're going to be writing a lot of JavaScript, it gets like cluttered pretty quickly. So just weigh it out. If it's a quick small project, you can write a JavaScript directly in the HTML file. But if it's a project that seems like it's going to grow legs, then work on how you format your folder structure pretty early. That's going to help you a lot going forward, especially if you're going to add more and more functionality. I think at this point, we didn't realize that this was a big application already. We just said, hey, we just want to list items and then do the basic CRUD. I mean, it's a to-do list after all. We're not talking about like a school management system or something like that. But anyways, we need a way of making our HTML call JavaScript. All right, how we're going to do that is in our HTML here, we are going to connect to our JavaScript file, and we're going to put something in our JavaScript file, test in our HTML that things in our JavaScript file are actually getting run. All right, this is going to be index.js. Index.js and type. I usually use module. That's just from the world I come from. Writing backend JavaScript. If you use module, you can use more, let me say, later features of JavaScript. ES6, if you've heard of it, we can do things like exports, which you'll see I'm doing in a few files. What am I looking at here? For example, we're doing export. So that export is an ES6 feature. An alternative of that is something like module dot exports. I can't even type it the way my hands don't want to do it. But yeah, it's just an alternative way of coding. Really, it's not that important. It's just a way of coding that I prefer. I find I have less issues when I code like this, and my code looks a lot cleaner. So in our index.js file, just to test that our JS is working, we can console. What's going on? Now console is this in JavaScript. In JavaScript, it's this guy. If you right click and you say inspect, and you go to console here, you can log things out or write or print things out from your JavaScript directly into this section here. And how you do that is you say console. Let's make this smaller again so we can see everything as it happens. Console.log, and we can say it's come on, it's working. Yay, it's working. Awesomeness. All right, so on document onload, what we want to do is fetch this information, not this information, but rather this information. Let's move that over. Let's move our logic over. From our data, we want to call this list items function. So what we have to do is import list items from data. And actually, let's see, why is that not working? Nah, stop it. Index. Okay, I think you're working now. Let's see what happens when we console.log this. Didn't work? Index.js. What is that? Okay. I think it's just complaining that we didn't put JS there. Export. Why is that unexpected? Oh, it's because I didn't fix that line properly. Oh, there we go. So we have a function called list items. Okay, so list items is supposed to be calling our logic. Sorry, give me a second. You know, in fact, I think it would make more sense to actually have something called interface that we are exporting. Instead of exporting each function explicitly like this, I think having an interface, let's export const interface, or like API. I don't know what you want to call it. I think that's good. I think API. It's like a front-end API of sorts. API, which is going to be an object that's going to contain these functions of ours. Let's copy all of them. I type a little bit fast. Excuse me. But yeah, you can do that. So now we're just exporting our API. Okay, our API is an object that contains these functions of ours. So we're exposing these functions using this API object. And from here, we can just control everything that goes out. And we call it API. So API. Let's see what happens. API. There we have our API that has all the functions that we want. And what we can do is, well, let's see what happens when we say const or var items equals API dot list items. and then we console.log those items. Okay, it's an empty array. What we can do though is go into that function and see what it's supposed to be returning. So at the moment it is just returning an empty array, but if we go to our diagram, it's supposed to call our logic that actually provides us this data. All right, so let's close this guy. No, let's open this guy. Logic. So logic has a function called list items. We can export that. Is this a smart way to do it? No, I don't think there's a smart way to do it. I think we can, just like we did for our data, how we have our API at the bottom here, we can have a logic API. What did we call this in our design? Logic index. Fine, let's call it logic. And I think these are all the same functions. Logic. Okay, so import logic from logic.js. So this will return logic.list items. It looks redundant, but I think the reason we did it this way is so that we can be very deliberate about what we are exposing to our HTML interface or the outside world, let's say. And so we'll keep our data logic in this file, and this file just basically has a list of functions we are exposing to the outside world being the HTML. All right. When we go to our HTML now, let's see. So our HTML is connected to the index.html file UI. All right, and that is calling list items from our API or data. Maybe let's call it data as data. Data.list items. Cool, that sounds nicer. Connected to our data index, calling list items, which is connected to our logic items, which is returning our database, which has been dereferenced from the original object. All right, let's see what we have in our HTML now. Close this guy. Maybe refresh. db.js does not provide an export named default. So that error is coming from logic.js. And we're importing db from the database. The database is not exporting items. Okay. We can export default, just an array, simple everyday array. And yeah, it's working. Let's see. What items do we have in here? 1, 2, 3, 5, chores, homework, maths, homework, English. And what do we have here? Homework, maths, homework, English, 1, 2, 3, 5. Great. So in our HTML, in our front-end console, we are now getting information directly from our database. Now, let's see how that works again. From our user interface, we have plugged in an index.js file, which is essentially representing our user interface in the JavaScript world. Let's go back there so you see what I'm talking about. How am I going to do this? I want you to see. All right. So our HTML UI is this HTML, UI HTML, and that is linked to our index.js. But essentially, this index.js is just representing things going on in this HTML UI. It's our representative in the JavaScript world of our user interface. So this index.html sits over there. This then speaks to our index, data index, which is like the interface to our data, which is that guy, which speaks to our logic, which speaks to our actual database. All right, it's this entire chain, and this is how we have set it up so that our actual data is separated from the logic of the data, which is where we create things like a unique ID, which is separated from this index file, which essentially just maps out all of the functionality that we want to provide to this guy. All right, there isn't any data logic going on in here. The only thing that we have in here is a dedicated file that exposes certain functions to the outside world, certain functions that interacts with our data to the outside world. That is the whole reasoning behind this setup. It might look overly complicated at this point. However, it does actually quite simplify our work quite a lot, especially with more functionality. As more functionality comes in, you look at this diagram and you know exactly where to go and put your extra information. If something breaks, you know exactly which file it's in. You just need to familiarize yourself with the structure of our system. All right. So now what we want to do is get this information populated over here. We want to dynamically create this list so that our user interface actually represents what we have in the database, in the data store. We want this list to be this list. All right. In our index.js file, remember, it's connected to our HTML file just via that line. Pretty simple. We can then do some manipulation of this HTML. And what we want to do is dynamically convert this list of items into these items. So let's just copy one of those. We'll copy one of those to use as a template, literally, to create these items. Paste it in there. Now, let's create a function. Function is called, we're going to call it render list. All right. Now, render list is going to firstly clean up this div. So it's going to go and remove that stuff, clean it up. It's then going to populate this list with items generated from these items here. So how we do that is, firstly, we well, let's get access to our list element. Let's call it const list element equals document dot get query selector. I like query selector. You can just use normal CSS selector, so that's why I like it. And then it's going to return a list every time because it's a class, so we want the first item. And we're going to clear out the HTML. There's a function called inner HTML equals empty. What's going on? I don't know why you're acting up. Nope. Come back here. Then we're going to delete you from here. And then what we want to see basically is that this information must disappear. Sorry. We need to call that function first. Let's clear that. Hey, what did we get here? Undefined query selector list. That didn't work. That's interesting. Class list. What's this? Oh, okay. We just returned. Okay, cool. We didn't need that after all. No, why isn't this working? That worked. Div.list. let's console.log our list dot inner HTML. Let's clear this out. There, it worked. So what if we set it to empty? Ah, it was just being stubborn. Let's remove that line again, back. Okay, get smaller so I can see what's happening. Delete it. Come on. Delete it. Not deleted. Great. All right, so we are going to populate that list with our predefined items. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take our items. Remember, it's an array. Let's just print that out so we can inspect it again. Let's undo that a little bit. Ugh. I think we can remove those now. We don't need them. There we have an array. Okay, so what we can do is take this array, not even from there, can just grab it here. Say the to-do items, and then say for each item, we want to this list thing append some HTML. Some HTML that's going to look something like this. Except our description is going to come from our item description, and our time is going to come from our datetime. Okay, great. But you will notice that we have text here. Instead of our HTML coming up as like nicely styled HTML, it's coming up as a string of our HTML. Now, how HTML or our browsers work is there is actually a DOM object. I'm not sure if I can, like a DOM parser, DOM parser, which converts string. Let me see, can I find it here? Let's click on it. There we go. So it parses strings either to, it parses string using either HTML or the XML parser according to type and returns the resulting document. So it actually converts a string of HTML into like a document type of object, which the browser represents properly. So I think we're gonna be reusing that quite a lot. So let's create a new file here. New file, hold helpers .js, and this is gonna be parse HTML function parse HTML. It's gonna take our string, and it's gonna return a DOM parser instance. How do you do this again? I think, okay, let's just create a const parser equals new DOM parser, and then what we want to return parse from string. We'll have our string here, and I believe it's something like text HTML. Perfect. Okay, parse HTML. We can import that guy. Import parse HTML from helpers.js, and we can convert our string to a proper HTML first. Let me see, how does that look? That looks fine, but actually I think there's a bit of a mistake. Parse HTML. Oh, export. function. I think there's something there. Come on, stop. I think we have to say body. Yeah, because it's going to return a document object. So it's almost like HTML, but we don't want to return all of the HTML. We just want to return the body part of it. And there, awesome, brilliant. What do we have there? DB. We have chores, we have exercise, homework, maths, homework, English. Brilliant. And let's see. And they even have our hover effects as well. So that is certainly working. Let's see, what's the next step? Well, what would be nice is, firstly, let's see, what have we covered? How does this look? What's going on there? We have a bunch of bodies. I think we want to extract the body in a HTML instead. Not the entire body. Body dot. Child nodes. The first one. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just saw this guy. I saw this. Come on. I saw this bit of padding. I guess because I have a keen eye and I just did this. And I'm like, hey, where does that come from? And so I saw it said body over here, but body is not what I wanted. I wanted what's inside body, which is just this element here. So the first child of body. And then that worked. Okay, cool. Let's see. Sorry about that. I had to go refill my coffee. I've been working for over an hour without coffee, and that's not normal. All right. Okay. So we were on to our next item to create an item. So to create an item, we want to click on this button over here, have a dialog pop up, just like this. Click on this button, have a dialog pop up. That's going to allow us to add a description, a date, time, and we should be able to cancel this dialog, close it, or create the item. So yeah, let's get started. So to do that, we're on the create item list now. Let's just save this so long. What we want is a dialog. A dialog is one of those pop-up things that shows up, and you can like put any HTML you want in it, anything you want in it. So it's a element called dialog. You can have it open. Let me put it here. Have it open. We just say open like that, and then you get a dialog that's open there in the center. I think it has a padding or something. I'm not sure. Anyways, we're gonna give it a what are we gonna call it? A title. Div.title, and it's gonna say, what did we say in our design? New item. New item. Cool. Let's see, we're gonna have an input. We're gonna have an actions panel at the bottom, and cool. Yeah, let's get to it. We're gonna have an input, type text, name is description, ID, description as well. Okay. I think we want to have a placeholder, which is going to be description. So our users know to add a description over there. Okay, we're going to have a datetime local. I don't know what that means, but anyways, datetime. name, datetime, ID, datetime. Okay, I'm gonna have a div. It's gonna be called. Let's call it dialog actions. Okay, on the left we're gonna have a button that says cancel. Button, cancel. Let's do this. Class, close. We can probably just optimize a bunch of code because we're gonna have a couple of buttons that close your dialog. For example, this cancel one, this close one, this cancel one. They're all just gonna close this dialog. So we can give them a class so long cancel. Close. We're gonna have creates this side. It's not gonna be. We're not gonna give it that class. Let's give it an ID. Yes. Create item. Cool. Cancel. Okay. What do we have right now? All right. Let's put this in these. Okay. Let's say div. It's gonna be. Let's put this in divs. Just to stack them. Just to stack them. What we can do as well is, I think that's fine. Let's just leave it like that. Okay, let's style this stuff. Let's style this guy. Dialog. Div. Let's give it a padding or margin on top. Margin top of about 16 pixels. You know how much I like 16 pixels. Okay, looks good. Our inputs, maybe make them full width. Input width 100%. Heights, maybe make them a bit bigger. I don't know, something like 24 pixels. It's not big enough for me. 32 pixels. It's alright, I can complain about that. Padding, maybe 4 pixels padding. Maybe 8 pixels padding. Am I making it too much? Let's see what happens there. Maybe that's good enough. Alright, but I don't want that to have a margin. Let's say not. What's that guy called? I think it's called title. Not title. Cool. But title, what we do want title to have, let's see, dialog dot title, we want it to be a bit bigger. Font size 18 pixels. Nice. Font weight bold. It's looking all right. We're getting there. My coffee is still too warm. All right, we want to spread this out. Dialog. I think we called it dialog actions. It's gonna have a display flex. I'm gonna say justify content, space between. All right, we're looking good. Cool. Now what we want to do is make this appear when we click that add new button and make it close when you click this cancel button. All right, did we give this dialog an ID? Let's give it an ID. Let's say create item dialog. All right, and then on our add new button, where's our add new button? It should be here somewhere. Let's say, let's give it an ID as well. Add new button. Add new button and create item dialog. So how are we gonna do this? Well, what we can do is let's create a function. Everything starts with a function. This is gonna be a function where we attach our event listeners. Listeners. I think that's how you spell listeners. Okay, create dialog. Wait on that. Okay. We want to find our, let's say, const add new item button equals document dot get element by ID add new button. Now what we can do is when someone clicks on the add new button, we can say show or open open this dialog. Now maybe there's a smart way, clever way of toggling a dialog. Let's see. Now you know what? Let's just say document. Say function. Function. We're gonna grab that. Honestly, you know, we didn't need this. Just hold it in there. Get ID. And what we want to get here is our dialog, create item dialog. And then we want to say show. I think that's the show. Oof, that doesn't work. Are we even getting anything? Oh, we're not calling our attached listeners. Yay! We got our dialogues to show up. Great. Also, when you click on this button, we want this to close. So I'm already anticipating a time where we're gonna have a lot of these buttons coming up, and we want them to be able to close their parents' dialog. So what we have to do there is, since these haven't been created yet, we can how can I put this? We can create we can attach a listener to the entire document, so to the whole bodies. Okay, let me back up a little bit. So what we did here, we went and we found our add new button, and we attached an on-click event listener to it. So what happens when you click on the button? So what happens is we're gonna fire this function, which is gonna grab our create item dialog and show it. But now what about elements that haven't been created yet? Well, what we can do is we can attach an on-click listener to the entire document. And when you click on the entire document, we can then check, where did you actually click? Did you click on a button that has a class cancel or close in this case? So that's why I actually named it close. I think, let me be more specific. Let me call it dialog close. So if you click on a button called dialog close, we're going to find that button's parents dialog, or like the immediate parent dialog, and we're going to close that guy. All right, so how do we implement this? We say document dot body dot click. I think that's how you do it. Equals function, and we can grab the events itself. Let's say console.log the event, just to see that our function is actually working. It's not working. Let me Google attach not attack, attach event listener on dynamic element JS. Let's see. Oh, we just you skip this guy. All right. You just say document.click. No. Oh, come on. Okay. Let me do it the way they do it. Let's comment that out. Let's see console.log e. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so now what we can do is we can check if e.target dot has class, I think it's has class, I called it dialog close. Let's see if it's gonna work. Check if element, what's this, has a class? Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, class this contains. Greatness. Let's see. False. False. True. 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 All right. So some good coffee. So let's say a dialog close buttons. Okay, so if and at the end we're going to return false, something like that. We also want to say e.prevent default. If that's the case, what else do we want to do? All right, so what we want to do is find, let's see, check if element of is a child of another JavaScript. Has parents, and all contains I think there's something like closest parents or something. Let me see. JS get closest parent. I don't know. Oh, we just say closest. All right. So let's see. E.closest dialog. Is this gonna work? Console.log. This guy. Great. And then we can close that guy. I think it's just close. I'm not sure. Amazing. Beautiful. Beauty. So good. All right. So we now know how to close our dialogues. Let's say submit our new item. Okay, so this button is not dynamic, so I don't think we should put this here. Submit new item. So what we want to do is attach an event listener once again to that create item button. So we're going to get document dot get element by ID. This create item. I'm going to say on click. I'm going to run a function. Let me see. Is that the reason? Okay. Yeah, I think if I group these in like a form, that just makes more sense instead of talking about blah 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 thingamabob. 1 second. I'm low on coffee. Already, can you believe it? Yeah, let me fix up some HTML. I think these definitely do belong in like a form of some sort. Or at least a div called a div with a class of form. It just feels right, you know? It just feels right. So in our styles here, instead of saying div not, let's just say div form. Yeah, that feels better. And this guy doesn't really need a margin top. I think it needs a padding top. I mean, you won't see the difference, but I care. What else? Do you want an underline there as well? We didn't put it in our design, so stuff it. Let's take a sip. Really good. All right. I think also it's not too necessary to have this. I mean, it's nice, but we don't. Fine, let me leave it for now. All right, so when you create, when you click this button, we want to access our create dialog. Yo, my brain is going crazy right now. We want to grab information from this description and this date time. So what we want to do is we want to say const description. I think this is a bad idea. Const item var item equals description. So we're gonna get our description from document dot get element by ID. I think we call it description, not description. Description. And we have our date time. Date time, not data time. Date time. Okay. And what we are going to do with that is we are going to post it. We want to call our logic and call this create item function. All right, so let's see, data.list items. So we know how to list items. We can also say create item. Yeah, let me not remove that. Data.create item. And then we want to close our dialog. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit here. So I'm going to figure out a way of toggling our dialogues. You know, we have a rule in programming. It's called DRY, D-R-Y, don't repeat yourself. what did we call this? Dialog, create dialog. We're gonna close it. And we want this function. Close. Create. Okay. And also what we want to do is render our list. So you want to close the dialog. Okay, we want to send to the API data create item. We want to render an updated list, and then we want to close our dialog. All right, so let's see. Test 1, something that must happen on the 30th at 16:45. Create. Nothing. Why is nothing happening? So we passed our item. Let's go to create item. Create item. Oh, just accepts an item and does nothing else. Well, I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to do something like logic create item, pass the item. The item enters our logic. It gets an ID. We push the item into our database, and then we return the item. So if I save, I think this should work now. Add item. Test 1. Cool. Create item. Lovely. That's so lovely. We're getting something, but obviously that is not test 1, and that is not a datetime value. And that is simply because we did not specify that from those elements we are just looking for the value. Test 1 once again. Okay. Brilliant. Can you see that? That is awesome. That is what I call symmetry. So we are already able to create and we are already able to create an item. We can check that off. Let's say done. Let's say done. Okay. So since we can create an item now, I don't think there's a need for these fake ones. They were just there as a placeholder. Great. I think we can also remove the fake ones in our data store. Great. You know, you can actually put something really cool using CSS in an empty div like we have. Let me show you a cool trick. Where's our list? Moment. You can say list that is empty after content. Your to-do list is empty. Why don't you add a new one? Pardon me. All right, so yeah, you can put like a fancy message like that. Maybe let's give it a bit of style. Make it look a bit neater. You can say display block padding 16 pixels, you know how I do. Why are you looking weird? Click. Really? Heading top. Come on. That's fine. I don't want to do anything more. Maybe color. Make it CCC. .888. So let's get started. Add new test1 something. We haven't checked what happens if we don't put in a date. We just get an error. Error, item is invalid. I think we want to be more specific. And actually, I really don't care about the dates though. Maybe you just don't want to put a date. I mean, who am I? Who am I to judge? UI, data, logic. But you must have a description. No, I'm not willing to compromise on that. Okay. Test1, create. Brilliant. I think I'm happy with that. But what happens if you don't put a description? Okay, item is invalid. And we know only. Let's just put that error. I think I have a good reason to put that. We can alert. That's what we can do. Let's say try to create an item, and then we can catch the error. If we do get an error, and what we can do is alert that message. Let's see if that works. Create. Error, item is invalid. Brilliant. Okay. Okie dokes. Hey, I'm really happy with that. Put something SDF or item1. There. Okay. So we can create. Done. And we even did some validation. We showing some errors and helping the user out along the way. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to read an item. So when we click on one of these items, we want to open a dialog like this where we can close, edit, and delete. Okay. Let's go into our HTML. You're gonna have another dialog similar to this, but this one is for read item dialog. Read item dialog. We won't have a title. We will just have a description. We'll have a date time. Let's remove all those. Let's see. ID, description. Don't really want this. I want this to be classes. Cancel. We're gonna have a div here. Div for things on the right where we can. Let's call button a button. A button group. Create and edit. Edit item. Delete item. How are we looking? Maybe let's open this so we can test so long. Test. Test. Open. Okie dokes. I think our dialogues need to be like a bit wider. Dialogue with 100%, but max width of like, I don't know, 360 pixels. Yeah, just so it's a little bit smaller than our entire to-do list. In fact, this is probably even too big. 240. Nah, 300 is fine. Okie dokes. I think that spacing is fine as well. I don't need to worry about that. So we can cancel or close. I think we want to call it close. And hopefully it does what we intended to do every time we have this dialog close clause. And it does. Greatness. Edit deletes, we don't have anything to do there yet. So what we want to do, let's go back to our design. When you click on this guy, we should read whatever ID it has. We're going to call the API to return us information about this item. We're going to open this dialog and populate this dialog with information from the API or from our data. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, firstly, we need to attach a listener on these elements, but we can only have that element once a new element has been created. So since we now know that we can actually create an element, we can, like, because we are still testing, let me go back. Our DB had some elements here. What we can do is, well, take advantage of our ability to create an element, and we're gonna call that function at the beginning to add test data. We'll come here, and we will have a let's have UI. Help. How am I gonna do this? Because I want it to be out of the way, you know. but I'm not saying what. Okay, so what I want to do is at the beginning of when we load our application, I want to specify whether I want to load test data immediately or not. And right now, let me see. Try. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Save file. Test environment.js. Let's see. Export, load, test data. No, I am changing my mind again. I think what I'm going to do is remove this, delete, and in our logic layer, I'm gonna have a function load test data. It's gonna call itself. Don't worry about this. And it's gonna say for each item dot create item. All right, so this is just gonna help us populate our It's going to help us populate our data in the beginning. It's pretty much the same as we had before, except I've moved it further back and made it complicated for no reason. For no reason that is important to explain. All right, but I can just go in and remove this when we are ready, and we won't have that test data at the beginning. All right, so let's go back to our dialog that shows our read dialog. And we don't want it open immediately, and we don't want it to have a random description and a random time. What we want to do instead is we want to click on one of these items, and we want them to appear in our read item dialog. Now, these are dynamically added. They are added from items we generate from JavaScript, and so we can't immediately attach event listeners to them. But we do have a section, this section, where we are attaching listeners dynamically to elements. We actually just have a listener on the document, and then we check if you had clicked on a element with a particular class, and then we act if that's the case. All right. So I had copied read dialog. Let's see. Open read item dialog. Okay, and that is if you click on. That is if you click on an item with a class of list item. So if the target element contains a class of list item, let's say, well, in fact, we can just open it already because we know how to do that. You can say show we won't have anything interesting at the moment, but we can test that it's working. Yeah, it's not working. All right, we can also check if we have a parent. I think we can just say closest list item. Brilliant. And let's see if the close works. The close works. Let's see if we click outside. Nope. If we click on, brilliant. All right. So maybe the first thing we can do is pause. All right. So what we want to have, we want to be able to read the ID of the dialog that the user clicked on. So when you click on this homework English, we want to know what ID belongs to this element. So what we can do here, where we create the list item, we can add our good friend, I'm sure you've forgotten him, a data element or a data attribute called, we're going to call it item ID equals, well, we know that our item has a parameter called ID, so we can just throw this in there. We can actually look at the HTML here just to make sure that it's been loaded. No, that's not good. Maybe let's console.log our items and see. No, that's not good. So our logic is probably not creating our IDs the way we want. Generate ID, return ID. Hey, what's going on? Console.log item. And then hey, let's call it unique ID. Maybe that's the problem. All right, so for some reason, our unique ID is coming back as not a number. Let's remove a bunch of this stuff. Console, unique ID, unique ID, unique ID 1. Oh, I see. Our functions are created first. So this is fired before this is fired. So why is that? This is run before this is created, and that is our problem. What you can do is, if this is a falsy, we can say it's equal to 1. You can say it's equal to 1, and then one, two, three, four. Cool. Very, very, very random situation. That wasn't supposed to happen. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. We are making progress. So now when we click on this guy, let's just try to display. Excuse me. Let's try to display the ID over here. So that's not in. That's in UI. Data attributes item ID. Okay. Let's see. Read data attributes JS. Columns, index number, parents ID, parents. Okay, so we just data set columns. Okay. It's going to be something like data set. First, let's see if we can log it out. We can say var item ID equals this guy console.log. Oh, come on. Item ID. Undefined. Let's see if we can see our list items to begin with. Yeah, we can. Let's see if we can see our list items data set. So it doesn't become item ID like this. Instead, it becomes item ID like this. So we can probably remove that now, and when we click this, we should get 1 and get 4. Greatness. Okay, so what we can do, we can take that ID and we can say to our data dot read item, this guy. So we will get our var item equals, well, item, let's call it item data. And let's call this dialog actually, var dialog equals this, and so we can say dialog.show, and once we get our data, we can say dialog dot find dialog dot query selector, and we are looking for a description, and we're gonna say dot inner HTML is gonna be item data dot description equals item data dot description. We can do that with datetime as well. Okay, let's see if that worked. Undefined. Ooh. Let's console.log. Oh, it's in our item data. Is an empty object. That's probably because our read item hasn't actually been plugged in yet. So if we go back to our diagram, HTML talks to read item in the index file. Okay. Index file, read item gets the ID, and it's supposed to go to our logic, call the read item function, and that is supposed to return the item itself. So in our logic, read item, this guy is supposed to go into our database and find, find an item whose item.id equals. All right, so we have found our item, but I think we still have that problem where we have a direct reference to our initial object. So let me see, maybe let's create a function called break reference. Let's call it deref function. Deref, it's gonna take an object, it's gonna take a variable, oh lord, variable. It's gonna take a variable, and it's gonna return, it's gonna take a variable, stringify it, and then pass it. And that's gonna save us. So we're gonna deref this guy, and where do we have a find? We're gonna deref this guy too. Perhaps I was supposed to carry on building without this deref thing, so that when I finally put it in, you have context about why I put it in the first place. All right, let's see. So read item should now, let's make this a bit smaller, should now show us our item when we click on a list item. Item data. Oh, yeah, it's showing up over there. Chores. 19 April 22, 1600. Homework. Still saying chores, so that's not good. Is it always gonna say chores? Chores. Let's see. ID 3. ID. Why is it always saying chores? But the ID keeps changing. But yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, where were we? Alright, so we were busy investigating why our to-do items are coming back with different IDs, but they have the same description and date time. Well, They're the same date time because we made them that way. All right, and these are just our testing data. This is just our testing data. But this shouldn't be coming back with chores and ID number 3. Chores is ID number 1, as you can clearly see. All right, so let's do some debugging. All right, so how we have it in our design, we have the HTML UI, which is an index.js file, which is associated with our HTML, our interface. Sorry, let me get my fan. All right. We have an interface, a data interface, which is what we use to talk to our data logic from our user interface. We have data logic sitting at the back here. This does like data specific stuff, like creating a unique ID for our to-do items, things like finding the to-do item that you want to read, delete, or update, and then we have our actual database back here. And at the moment, it's just a simple JavaScript object. All right, and what's happening is when we call our read item, we are getting back from our logic a read item, but it seems like the information we're getting there is wrong. We are getting the correct ID for that list item, but the list item information doesn't seem quite accurate. What we can do firstly is just make sure, let me go back to our testing information here. Let's make sure that our date times are different for these items, and well, our descriptions are already different, but that can help us track down this bug here. All right, so we can go in here, chores 29 or 4 o'clock. Let's say exercise on the 30th at 12 o'clock. Do a homework on the 31st. It's gonna be 6 o'clock. Do a homework again on there's no 31st April. April, May. Let's also say May the 2nd. Okay, May the 2nd at 5 o'clock. I think that's good enough. 16, 12, 18, 17. All right. So over here, we're getting the right dates. But what happens when we click on one of these elements? So here we want to see chores 29 April. Our item data shows us chores 29 April. Okay, let's close that. Exercise. We're getting chores 29 April as well. Chores 29 April, but we are getting an ID of 2, which is what we expect. So let's close this. Let's figure out what's going on. Where is it breaking? Is it breaking here in our data logic? Let's go there. Data logic read. We are calling the read function. Oh, that is why we have that one equal sign. So when you have one equal sign, you're basically saying that for each item here, you want to set it, for each item ID, you want to set it to the ID that we received. And so what's going on is we are setting, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. Let me try and explain what is going on here. I see what's going on. So the find function returns the first item which returns true. So we get the item that returns true in this function. And if you had to put this in brackets like that, it would convert this value to a boolean or a truthy value. And since our IDs are not 0, that is converted to a truthy value. And that truthy value for the first item that we get, which is chores, it actually changes chores ID to this ID that we just received. So whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, it sets that ID to what we have in chores. Chores up here. So it says chores ID equals whatever we passed in. So 3, for example. And then since this is not 0, it then returns this entire thing, and that's why we were getting chores the whole time. So we're getting that bug because we used one equal sign. So all we need to do is just add another equal sign. So now what this is doing is it's comparing, it's asking, is item ID equal to this ID that we received in our function? All right. I believe this should work now. Let's go back and see. Let's click on chores. Item data, chores, okay, close, exercise, 30 April, perfect. All right, our debugging skills are getting better by the day. All right, so we still have these funny console logs all over the place. I don't like leaving them all over the place, so let's remove that. Okay, so what else do we want to do? Let us see. We probably want to set on this. Okay, let's open this guy. We probably want to be able to edit these chores to something else. So we want to click on this edit button. Let's go back to our design. When we click on this edit button, we're going to open another dialog. It looks pretty much like the first create one, but it already has these values populated. And instead of saying new item, we say edit item, and you can then update the item or cancel the item. And when you update the item, we want to call the update item function and pass it the ID of this item that we are editing. Okay, so let's get to work. Maybe let's start with the user interface first. Let's create a dialog like this. I think we can just copy this one, create a copy of this one, and then change what we need to change. And let's start off from there. Let's go to our HTML. Not the read item. We're gonna take the create item. Instead of saying new item, we're gonna have what's this? Edit item. Edit item. Okay, cancel and update. Cancel and update. Update. All right. Also, instead of calling create item, we're gonna say update item. Update item dialog. Update item dialog. Update item dialog. Cool. I think that's pretty nifty. Getting a bit of a problem now. Now we have two items. We have two elements that have duplicate IDs, and that's problematic. What are we gonna do here? I guess let's not call them ID. Let's not make them IDs. Let's make them class. In fact, you know, let's just remove this whole damn thing. Where's the other one? ID equals description. Where are you? Let's remove that as well. IDs are pretty dangerous, you know. It's like, imagine you are born in South Africa, you have an ID number, and it turns out that someone else in the same country also has your ID number, and they've been committing fraud, and they think that it's you who committed that fraud because they identify as you. Anyways, we probably need to fix some stuff now because we broke, we removed our IDs. So in our UI here, we had situations where we get element by ID. I think we can say query selector instead. Document query selector, and we can use something like name. Okay, it's gonna be, come on, query selector. You can say something like name. Name equals description. Okay, and this is gonna be inside a create dialog. What's this? Submenu item. Create dialog thingamabob. Create item dialog. I think that should work. Let's see. Let's try to create a new item. Let's see if that's going to work. test item. No date, create. Yeah, it worked. Let's see. Says chores. Ah, that's not good. Homework, that's good. Says chores, that's not good. What is going on? What is going on? Maybe let's inspect element. Let's see what ID it received. It got ID 1. That is not good. Why did it get ID 1? Aren't you curious? I'm curious. Let's go to our logic. Where is this being set? Console.log unique ID. Let's see. Outside. And then every time we call it inside. Inside. Unique ID. Console. Inside 0. Then we set it there. Yeah, that's a problem. What if we just remove this? And then we get 5. Because now we are setting it only inside. So that's called a race condition. What's happening is functions are declared, created first in JavaScript, in the JavaScript runtime. So when we run this function, JavaScript hasn't actually created the unique ID variable. We then set the unique variable, the unique ID variable inside here. We say that it's equal to 1. And what happens is afterwards, JavaScript then goes and actually sets this and resets it to 1, and that's what's creating that problem. However, if we just remove this initialization outside, then it fixes our problem, and we get up to 5 here inside. All right, I think we can remove these and try our test again. Say add test 1, create test 1. Now we want to see test 1 when we click here. Great, and we get test 1. Everyone loves coffee. All right, so let's keep it moving then. Now what we want to do now is click edit, and when we click edit, we basically get a dialog similar to this, except, oh well, exactly like this in fact. Maybe let me go back. I need to fix this. When I create a new item, this should be blank again, and it's not blank. So let's fix that quickly. Click create item, read. We want to reset these guys. Let's grab both of them so you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm gonna be a bit naughty and do some fancy stuff. All right, let's add an item, create, it's empty. Let me not do fancy stuff. It looks ugly. All right, that's good enough. So here we are resetting our input elements so that they're empty. Okay. Oh, coffee is really good. Okay. So we are at clicking this edit button, and we get a pop-up which allows us to edit our to-do item. All right. Where do we open the grid dialog? It's over here. What we want to do now is basically attach a attach the ID of this item to this button somehow, some way. Let's look at what's that button called again. We gave it a class, I think an ID, in fact, not a class. Edit. Edit item. We can give it a data attribute as well. I don't see a problem with that. Or we can just keep it in JavaScript. That should be fine. It's going to be a bit of a mess. Let me see. Where do I want to keep this information? For now, I think it's fine if we just put it over there. We can put it inside a hidden element. That's what people usually do. They have like these hidden input elements. I haven't used it in a while. Let's say HTML hidden input type hidden. Cool. We can throw it in there. Read dialog. We can say input type hidden, and then name equals item dash ID. Cool. And then we'll give it a value over here. Where is this? We'll get it like that. Read dialog. Name. What did we call it again? I forgot already. Item ID. Item ID value equals our ID. Item ID. Cool. So when we click on, it's going to be a dynamic listener as well. Let's say open edit item dialog. That's some really good coffee. We probably don't want it here because that button actually already exists. So we're gonna say open edit item dialog. Yeah, let's copy some code. What's that button called? Edit item. Okay, so when you click on this button, what we want to do is firstly, do you want to close this modal? Yeah, I think I want to close this modal. So firstly, we want to close the read item dialog. So this guy dot close. I think it's called close. Do we have close anywhere else? Close. Yeah, looks good. And then we want to open the edit item dialog. Firstly, let's see if that works. Chores, edit. Oh, not close, man. Open or show. Is it show or open? Show, I believe it's show. No, it's probably open then. Edit item dialog. Oh, update item. Okay. Are we gonna go with let's go with edit. The button is called edit. But then here we see update. So I don't know. Edit. Come on. Edit item dialog. Why is it not showing? show. Yay! Greatness. That coffee does slap. Okay, so what we want to do now is populate these fields with our date. I hope the date is gonna work. Of course, I just created some random dates, which are not these ones, not the same formats as what we generated here. Yeah, let's see how it goes. So what we're gonna do is query selector, description, create item, query selector. There we go. I want to do something like this and say edit item guy. You are gonna have a value of let's remove these. These lines are getting really long. Let's see. Not credit item. Why do I have credit item? Let's see if I have credit item anywhere else. I probably do. No, that's good. Okay. Edit item. You are gonna be set to, I don't know, just for demonstration purposes. This is probably the wrong way of doing it, but we're gonna get the item again. Read item, item data, just like that. Item data. And here we're gonna have description, item data. Here we're gonna have date time. And we probably want a hidden input as well here. Okay, ID. Where do we set one of those? It's when we read the dialog, so it's over there. Item ID. Greatness. So a little bit of duplication, but you know, we can come back and fix this, because you remember we do not want to repeat ourselves. So where did you get your ID? Well, what had happened was this button was clicked inside the read item dialog, and inside that read item dialog we have this hidden input with the same name, but it's from the read item dialog. So we can actually grab that value. Let's see, for item ID equals what comes from the read item dialog, and we're gonna copy it over to the item edit item dialog, hidden input, and set it to the same value essentially. All right, that looks good. Let us see homework maths, edit homework maths. Okay, the problem here is our date time is not set correctly. Maybe there's a way of fixing that, but I think what I will do is just allow I'm going to make it so that you can just update it from here, and when you update it, then we will get it in the correct format. Okay, let's keep going. We have some code that allows us to create a new item, create item click. Now we can create a similar action to update the item. And what's the button there? Update item, click. Update item, click. What we're gonna do is we're gonna read some information from the edit item dialog. Our inputs are the same. We're gonna call data, not create, but update item. Update item. We probably want to pass in our item data. Our item ID. And the fields we want to update, which are going to be the description and the date time. And we might get an error, so we can just alert it if we do get an error. And then we can reset those values, those edit item dialog values. And then we close it. And we should have a response. Really good. All right. And let's see. Edit. Okay. Other way around. var item equals. Edit item. Update item. Okay, let's see. Have we implemented this function? Does it actually work? Update item returns false, but actually we know that it's supposed to be something like this. Except it's gonna call update item, pass in the ID. Okay, and when we get to the other side, let's save this. When we get to the other side, the logic, we need to fix this. So it's gonna look something like our create item, except we are going to, okay, item description invalid. Okay. We don't want to generate a new ID. What we want to make, we do want to make sure that we do have an ID, or ID is not set. Okay, so now what we want to do is find the item, and we are going to set a new description for it and a new time for it. So let's see. How are we going to do this? Var dp item equals item data dot description equals item dot description, and date time equals item dot date time. Okay, and we don't need to push it because it's already in there. We just get it from our database. It is the reference of the actual item, so we that's why we're not derefing it. So when we update here, it will actually update the item in our database. Let us see. Update item, return dp item. I think that's good. Returns update logic. Okay, so we're not returning a boolean, we're just returning the updated item. All right, let's see. Take chores, edit chores, updated. Let's give it a, so this is what I meant, that we can just update it. I give it a date that actually matches the format that we use. Update, there we go, it was updated. And I think we should actually just go and update our date times to use the correct format in our data here. What says data? No, I don't care to have different times. I know my code works. There is a solution for all of this debugging I've been doing. If you write your tests up front, then you will not have to deal with these issues going forward. So the more features we add to our software, I will probably have to take some time just writing tests to make sure that we use as little time as possible fixing these random bugs that just pop up out of nowhere, basically. All right. Let's see, where are we? Exercise. Let's see if we can edit this exercise. Updated. Update. Updated. Nice. Add a new item. Test. No time. Edit. We can give it a time. Way back in the past. Yeah. It's done. Update. Oh, wonderful. Updated. No, I won't be doing English. I will be doing Spanish. Update. Ah, wonderful. All right, what are we missing now? Let's go back to our specifications document. So we can now read. Done. We can update. Done. All right, now we want to be able to delete an item. Ooh. All right. So what do we need to do to delete? Well, let's go back to our diagram. Well, we do have, let me come back here. On our read dialog, we can click on this button that creates this dialog, which allows us to edit. However, from the edit dialog, we can click this button, which updates our to-do item. What if from the delete button here, we can send our ID that actually deletes the item from our database? Well, let's give it a try. Let's see. Let's go to our UI JavaScript. We already have that button, that delete button. It's called delete item. And probably something like this. Sorry. Delete item. Let's grab that. All right. When you delete an item, you will already be inside the edit item dialog. So we can just grab the item ID like that. Once we have the item ID, we can make a call a try catch. And instead of update item, we're gonna call delete item. I believe that function is correct, and it is correct, and it's just expecting an ID. It doesn't work for now, of course, but we're gonna implement that just now. But once an item is deleted, well, what we want to do is re-render the list, and we want to close our read item dialog. So where is read item dialog? We want to close this guy. Where is it? Read item dialog. Aren't we closing it anyway? There. Close this guy and re-render our list. So delete item, we just have to pass our item ID. If we get an error, then we can display the error. Either way, we want to re-render the list and close the read item dialog. So let's implement this delete function. Data deletes is gonna call logic deletes item. I'm happy I actually named these the same. Makes life a little bit easy. Now you might be asking yourself why I named them the same, so it looks like I'm just duplicating code. But going forward, I would actually like to log into this application, have these functions being hosted on a server somewhere. So if say you add a to-do item on your phone and you log onto the app on your laptop, I want you to have updates. So the implementation of this logic might change in the future. So that's why it's good to have this segmentation of what's the word? Priorities. What's the word? I'll remember the word. But you basically want files to deal with a limited scope of responsibilities, and separating the stuff like this is going to help us in the future. Say we want to host this section on an AWS server or on Google or some other API somewhere. We can get into that a bit later, not right now. I think right now the scope that we've created for ourselves is sufficient, and we are already learning so much from this. All right, so we're going to call delete, send our ID down the pipeline to our logic. Our logic is going to get our ID. Where is it? And we want it to essentially find the item in our database and remove it. But we are going to do this in this fashion. We're going to say db equals dot filter, where we don't have an item that has this ID. And by doing that, we will delete the item from our database. And then what do we want to return? Can return true. It's been deleted. If not, then I don't know. Just return true every time. Don't return anything. Just return true. It's fine. Let's see. Are we actually deleting items now? Homework. Delete. Assignment to a constant variable. All right. So that's not working. That's because we are saying db equals filter, and we can't reassign db. We can use a function, I believe it's called splice. Let's go JS remove from array. Splice. Since filter is not working for us, I do think splice is going to work for us though. No, this is going to return a new. You know what? I think what we can do instead is find its index, find its position in the array, and then call the delete function. So I think the function is called index of id equals. So let's say index equals const index or var index. And then we can say delete db delete that index in the db, and yeah, let's see what happens now. Delete nothing. Console.log db. Okay, controls delete. That is frustrating. do we want to maybe change this from being a constant? Maybe I did this function wrong. Let's see. Console.log, the index. Let's see. Are we even finding the correct index? For chores, it should be 1. Delete, -1. What was our index, our ID? ID. Delete. ID is blank. Interesting. Delete item. What are we sending over here? Oh, we're not in the edit dialog. We're in the read item dialog. Of course. Okay. Controls. Delete. One. Okay, the problem is string 1 is not integer 1. So let's go into our logic. I think you can see something like plus. Let's see what happens when I say plus ID. I think it's going to turn it into a number. Probably shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so that does work. But yeah, essentially what I'm doing by putting this plus here is I'm converting this string. Let me show you. Let's call this string, and the same thing, but if I put plus over here, then it converts it to a number. So let's just, let me show you. Delete. See, here you have a string, here you have a number, just because I put a plus there. All right, but you can actually just do it like this. Just put it inside a function called number, and then that should work. In fact, I can even delete this. I'm pretty confident. Chores, delete. Oh. How does index of work in my JS? Find index? Maybe that's it. Okay. Delete. What's this? Okay. I know what's going on. So here, it did delete the element, but now when it's returning, where are we? Over here, where we say list items, it's now returning an empty index. So what we need to do is say filter and item, where item is actually like something. So okay, need 2 of those. All right, I think we can now. So what this is doing is we are only returning items that are actually sets. So items that are not null. When you delete an index, where are we? When you delete an index, it essentially, let me do this. Here we have index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. So when I say delete index 1, for example, then it turns this into undefined. It doesn't remove it from the array, it just removes the objects from the array and replaces it with undefined. All right. So what we need to do is when we return the list of items, where is it? List items. When we return the list, we need to remove all of those empty indexes. So anything falsy, so even if you set it to 0, we are just going to remove it from our objects. Sorry, from our list. So yeah, that should work now. Let's see. Delete. Perfect. Add new item. Test 1. Add some random time. Okay. Done. Create. There we go. Add item. Test 2. Create. Brilliant. Edit. Cannot read properties of undefined. Interesting. So we are getting more problems because we are now creating these empty indexes in our array. So we are getting all sorts of problems because we have all of these empty gaps in our array now. We have like at random places like undefined. All right, so I think what we should do is create where's our logic? Create a save function that is able to return us a clean. It's able to return us a filtered version of our database. Okay, so function get filtered db, and that's basically just going to return this. Return get filtered db. And in other places where we are using this db to push items, for example, or where we want to find items, we can actually find items from find filtered items. db.find, find filtered items. db, where else are we accessing this db? db.find index, delete item. Okay, from the original db. Okay, that looks good. How are we looking? Let's keep testing. Add new item, test. Okay, exercise, delete, English, delete. Okay, we can do something like that. So, okay, let's delete an item, create item, create item, delete, delete, delete. Nice. All right. So this is called a safety null checker thingamabob. I forgot what it's called. But what it does essentially is it says, well, we hope that this is an object, and if you are an object, then I want to go and see if you have a index called ID. And it's a null safety, something like that. But anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you have learned a lot. I will be uploading this code to GitHub, and you can download it and test it on your end. And maybe we'll do some more work on it in the future. You tell me what you want. It's been a pleasure showing you this tutorial. It's been my first tutorial ever, and I hope you will learn a lot from it. So thank you. This is our what to do item, our to-do list.